Welcome to Everyday Linux User, and today I'm going to be talking about hard links and soft links. The reason for today's tutorial is I saw a post on Facebook where somebody was getting really confused about the difference between hard links and soft links, so I thought I would give my view on it here. So what is a hard link? So if you look up in Google about hard links, you'll see lots of technical documents explaining what it is, but I'm going to try and do it from something real and tangible to see if that'll help you understand it better. So my dad is called Bob, so his name is Bob. Now Bob's got a passport number, and that identifies Bob as being Bob to the government. To me though, he is Dad. He's still Bob, but he's also Dad. So even though he's my dad, he still has the same passport number and he's still Bob. And to my children, he is Granddad. He's still Bob, he still has the same passport number, but he's also Dad and he's also Granddad. So there's a hard link between the three things there. He's a Granddad, he's a Dad, and he's Bob. Every file in Linux has an inode, so you can consider that to be the same as like your passport number. It's an identity that identifies a file. So over here we've got a picture of Bob, and in my Linux folder the Bob JPEG file looks like this. You can see that Bob was created on June 17th, and there's the inode number 5314. Oops. For those of you who are eagle-eyed, that isn't the inode number. That is actually the file size of the file. I'll show you how to get the inode later on. So if I want the picture to be called Grandad, because Bob is also a Grandad, I could copy the file like this. But if you think about it, Bob and Grandad.jpg are now two separate things. They're two separate pictures. So if I edit the picture of Bob, Grandad stays the same and Bob looks different. So they're no longer one and the same thing. But they are. Physically they are. Bob and Grandad are the same thing. So that doesn't really work. A hard link lets me create a physical link between two things. So in this case I want to make Bob and Grandad the same thing. So if I do link bob.jpg and grandad.jpg, do ls-lt, you can see Bob and Grandad, they have the same inode, so they're essentially the same file. So if I edit Bob in an image editor and save it, then Grandad will also change. It's worth noting that if you use some image editors in this case, when you save the file, it will overwrite the file as opposed to saving it as the same image. So in that case it would actually break the link and they'd become two separate things. But in reality, if you could have an image editor that saved the file physically without overwriting it, then Bob and Grandad would both update to be the same image. So I can create another hard link to Bob, call it Dad, and you can see that they still all share the same inode, and if I edited a picture of Bob, both Grandad and Dad would change as well, so the picture would be completely the same whichever picture you opened. And as you can see up here, you've got this number here, which is number 2. So at that point I only had 2 links to that image. It was Bob and Grandad, but now because I created a third link, I've got 3 links to the same image: Bob, Dad and Grandad. Deleting a file doesn't delete the actual file, it just deletes the link. So if I removed dad.jpg, you'll see that Bob still exists, Grandad still exists. The link number has gone down to 2. Only when there's no numbers left here will the file physically be deleted. So if I deleted Bob and then Grandad, the file would be deleted. If you think about what I've done when I deleted Dad, the chances are Bob still exists as Bob, and Bob still exists as Grandad because my child would still call Bob Grandad. What it really means is I am probably no longer in existence, and therefore Bob is no longer a dad to me because I no longer exist. So what's the purpose of hard links in Linux? Well, as you have seen in my example, the same picture can be called multiple things without taking up extra space. So this is useful for music collections, photo collections. So say you've got a picture of me skiing, you've got a picture of France, it was taken in France, you've got a picture, you want a picture of the Alps. You could have the same photo and call it alps.jpg, france.jpg, garyskiing.jpg, and it's all the same file. So the purpose of hard links is classification. You're classifying something as the same thing. There is a restriction to hard links. A hard link must exist on the same partition as the physical file. So if I have a file called bob.jpg and a file called grandad.jpg, they have to reside on the same partition. And you may wonder why that is. Well, if you think about Bob, Dad and Grandad, they are essentially the same person. They exist in the same space and time. So Dad can't be in France while Bob's in Germany because they're the same person. Bob can't be on one bus and Grandad on another, unless you do something awful to Bob, in which case they could exist in both places at the same time, but they're split and they're really no longer the same thing. So we won't go there because that's kind of morbid. So what is a soft link? Well, a soft link is commonly known as a symbolic link, and it's about pointing to a physical object. So considering Bob, as we know, Bob is a granddad, and Bob is a granddad to my child. My child's called Ruby. So every day Ruby goes to school. At the end of the day, at the end of the school day, Grandad has to pick Ruby up from school. Bob has to pick Ruby up from school. The teacher says, "Ruby, who is picking you up today?" And Ruby replies, "Grandad." And to make sure that Ruby is being picked up by someone, the teacher says, "Can you tell me where Grandad is?" And Ruby extends a hand and points. "There's my Grandad over there." And that is an example of a symbolic link. Ruby is pointing to Grandad. So to create a symbolic link, we do ln -s, which means symbolic, the picture or file that you're linking to, and what you want to call it. So let's say, where is Grandad? If I do ls-lt now, you can see I've got a file called where is Grandad, and it's pointing at Bob. Notice this. What I've mentioned before, this isn't actually the inode, it's the size of the file. Sorry. To get the inode of the file, you do ls-i, and you can see that Bob's got 88423, Grandad's got 88423, but where is Grandad has 88464. Previously in other slides I've said it's 5314 is the inode. It's not, it's actually the file size of the file. But you can see that whereas Grandad is taking up 7 bytes, it shows Bob is taking up 5,314 and Grandad is taking up 5,314, but they're essentially the same file, so they're actually taking the same 5,314 bytes. It's the same file, whereas the file whereas grandad.jpg is a different file, and the 7 characters is simply a pointer pointing to bob.jpg. So unlike a hard link, a soft link can point to something anywhere. So if you think about it from Ruby's situation, so Bob could be going on holiday, so he's caught a bus, and Ruby could be on the pavement waving at Grandad on the bus. She's waving at Grandad, she's waving at Bob, she's waving at Dad in my case. So Ruby can be in one place pointing at Grandad, who's in a completely different place. So symbolic links allow you to point to things in different places, whereas a hard link is the same physical thing reclassified as something else. So why use symbolic links? Well, in Windows you use desktop shortcuts. Why do you use desktop shortcuts? Because it's a lot easier to double click on a shortcut than it is to navigate down through a file system to the thing you're looking for. And that's what symbolic links are. Symbolic links are shortcuts, they're pointers to things, and it makes it easier for you to navigate to files and folders on your partitions. So imagine I've got a folder and it's a photos folder. You know how digital cameras work. They often create these great big long folder structures. So in this case, I've made it quite simple in the sense I've got pictures, I've got the year, I've got the month, I've got the day, got where it is, France, got where it is, it's Alps, it's a skiing holiday, and it's a folder full of pictures, and it's me pulling some sick moves on the slopes. Now to create and to get to that folder, I could open the file explorer and I can navigate my way down, and every time I wanted to view the folders I could go down through the folders and find it. Or I could create a symbolic link called 6 ski moves, and I can store it in my pictures folder, and rather than navigating all the way down to the France holiday through the date, working out which date it was, I can just go into my 6 ski moves pictures folder, and it opens the ski and holiday folder, and I'm able to view all the files in that folder. Could I not use a hard link to do the same thing? Because essentially I could have a hard link that for each photo points to each photo in that folder. The trouble is hard links can't be used for folders, they can only be used for files. And imagine I wanted to move those photos at any point in time. So they're currently on my hard drive, but I want to put it on a network attached storage, I want to put it on an external hard drive. I couldn't move, my hard links would have to sit on the same NAS drive as the actual file itself, so that hasn't made my life any easier. Whereas a symbolic link, I can still have the symbolic link on my hard drive, I can have it on my desktop, I can have it in a simple folder, and I can point to a folder on the NAS drive, and as long as my NAS drive is mounted, my symbolic link will point to that folder and I can view those photos. And it doesn't matter if that NAS drive disappears, okay, I can't follow that symbolic link because it's not currently there at the moment, but as soon as I reattach that network attached storage, my link will start working again. So the key here is that hard links are about classification and soft links are about pointing. So in general, I would mainly probably use soft links over hard links, but hopefully today you've understood and you now know what the difference is between a hard link and a soft link. If you want to, you can find out more about links. You can type in man-ln, and then you can read this page which tells you all about links and what you can do with them. But essentially that is the difference between a soft link and a hard link. Hope you've enjoyed this video. I'll see you next time on Everyday Linux User.